Hi everybody, thanks for joining us today for our video on how to clean up and optimize your Salesforce orgs. Today we're going to look at how to clean up and optimize your orgs using a suite of tools from Metazoa called Snapshot. Snapshot is a complete org management solution that helps Salesforce admins really tackle the complete life cycle of managing their Salesforce orgs. It has comprehensive clicks-not-code release management. It has relational data migration for moving connected data sets between Salesforce orgs. But today we're really going to focus on these last three. Org documentation to really document the structure of your org so that you can understand it. Org optimization and cleanup, the suite of tools in Snapshot that helps you get rid of technical debt and unused metadata. And as part of optimizing your org, a suite of tools that help you manage your security model, your profiles, and your permission sets. Okay, so with that, let's dive in and take a look. Here we are at the main workspace view for Snapshot. What you see here are blue icons, and these are connections to Salesforce orgs. Could be any kind of org. Could be a production org, a sandbox, a developer org, or Salesforce DX. These green icons are connection to code repositories. Really any flavor of Git you can connect to in both push and pull metadata to and from that repository. Then connecting these up are deploy arrows, and these deploy arrows allow you to deploy metadata, they allow you to do rollbacks, they allow you to do org comparisons, and they allow you to migrate data as well. Now these are built with drag and drop, and they could be as complex or as simple as you need them to be based on your environment. So we're going to go to our workspace manager here, and we're going to jump over to a simpler view. So here we just have three Salesforce orgs, a sandbox, a staging org, and a production org that we've connected together. The first step to doing org optimization and cleanup with Snapshot is to back up the metadata for the org that you want to work with. Once that metadata is backed up, we can then analyze it in a wide variety of ways, and we're going to see that in today's session. So to back up an org, I want to drag on one of these blue icons. I can then right-click on it, and I can select to take a full snapshot, which would be a full metadata backup, or a partial snapshot, where I would select the metadata that I want to back up. So if we go to full snapshot, I would log into the Salesforce org, could be any type, as we said before, that I want to back up, and then simply go to the next tab and tell it to take snapshot. That will download all of the metadata for that org, and we'll now have it for analysis. These can also be scheduled. So for example, you could come in here and say, I want to back up this org every Friday at 2 a.m., every, let's just say, day. So this allows you to have an archive of backups for disaster recovery that you can store for any of your Salesforce orgs. Now, once you've backed up an org, you can right-click on it, and from there, you have a whole lot of options. They're really broken into categories here. You can visualize the org, you can document the structure of the org, you can do optimization, and you can analyze security. We're going to start out with visualizing some of the metadata that we grab in a backup. So I'm going to say visualize view assets. This is going to take us to our view asset screen where I see a list of all the metadata we captured with our backup, and by clicking on a metadata type, I get a list of that metadata here in the center. If there's subtypes for that, like for objects we have fields, for example, we can always drill down and see the list of the subtype as well. But where this really gets interesting is the ability to search and analyze the metadata. So I'm going to select a field here, a custom field, and we're going to go to our search palette. Now from here, I get a list of everywhere that field is being used across the org. So it's used in these custom objects, in these page layouts, and these object translations. By clicking on any item, I can actually see the usage over here. And with a right click, you can export it out in all of these available formats. And remember, anytime you're in Snapshot, anytime you see a matrix or a report, you can take it out with a right click. So this is a great place to do impact analysis, and we don't have to do this for a field. It could be a group or a queue or anything else that we wanted to search or analyze. Okay, so now that we've taken a look at how to sort of browse that metadata and understand it better, let's look at some other ways that we can document and understand the structure of our org. So I'm going to right-click on this org, and we're going down to the document menu. And from here, we're going to select our data dictionary. Now, a lot of people understand sort of what a data dictionary is. It's a list of objects and fields and maybe field properties that are in your org. Snapshot really takes that concept and expands on it in a number of ways. So over here on the left-hand column, we can select any objects that we want to report on. We'll stick to the account object for this demo. And then here in the center, we can browse through the different available items that we can add to the report. So we're starting with summary statistics. This is things like asset counts, how many Apex pages I have, when was the last modified date, those kind of things. You could actually name all of those assets. I don't want to scroll through that much today, but you may be necessary for your report. We could also add org limits. So here are all of my available org limits, and over here on the right, you can see what org limits I've added to the report. Org limits are things like your API request limits or your data storage limits. We can do package licenses. So here's all the packages in the org. I've added the snapshot package so I can see how many licenses of snapshot we have. You can also add your org licenses. We've added all the Salesforce org licenses here to the report. Now we also here get into really what is the meat of the report. The object properties, they're all available. You can move over to the right, any ones that you want in your report, and your field properties. These are really important. These are things like your pick list values, your help text, your description, and so forth. And the last part is relationships. So for example, with field relationships, I could select any other metadata asset and it will show me at the end of the report what fields are related to what assets. So this is sort of similar to what we did with the view assets search earlier, but really pulling it all into a data dictionary format. So let's go over to display report and run this in real time here for the account object. So here are my summary statistics. I got 283 Apex classes. I've got 12 Apex components. This is obviously a small dev org I'm using here for the demo. And I'm going to scroll through those here. Next, we get those org limits that we talked about, what their percentages are, where our limits are. Here are our org licenses that we added to the report, our package licenses. There's Snapshot. We got a lot of licenses of Snapshot. And then we get into sort of the main part of it here, the account properties and the field properties for the account. So here we have pick list values, descriptions, help texts. This is a pretty poorly documented org. Hopefully yours is better, but if not, we can help you discover that. And also things like actual formulas, if there's a formula on the field. So this is really a nice comprehensive data dictionary. And then once we get past the field properties, we get into those relationships that we talked about, seeing, in this case, how the fields are related to the page layouts. So again, this is an awesome way to build a data dictionary that administrators are generally building in piecemealed way in Excel by cut and paste, really with just a couple clicks. And of course, as always, we can right-click, take it out, or quick share it with our team. All of these reports that we see today can also be scheduled. So we could say, send this as a CSV via email to my admin team on, this schedule, for example. In this case, I have it every time a new backup's taken to go ahead and do it, but I could also just set it on a time. So all the reports can be scheduled and shared as well. All right, let's go out and look at a few other reports that can really help you understand your org. Okay, we're going to go ahead and right-click on the org to move back into the reporting area. Now, we were looking in the document section of the reports. That's where we found the data dictionary. A lot of other great reports here. Similar assets can tell you how similar things are, like profiles, for example. Relationship matrix, you get field versus page layouts, record types versus pick list, controlling versus dependent pick list. Lots of ways to really understand how your org is structured. But we're going to move over to the optimize menu. This is really where the reports for cleaning up your org exist. So this is where you can go to really tackle that technical debt. So the first report that we're going to take a look at is our field usage report. So field usage, a lot of people understand, can tell you, what fields are empty. No one's ever put data in them, so they're obviously a target to clean up. And this certainly does that, but it also goes a lot deeper. So let's select an object here. Let's take the account, for example, and let's go ahead and go into the preview. Now what it's doing here is it's cranking through every field on the account object and analyzing the field usage. So we're going to go ahead and pause it where it is, so we don't have to wait for it to crank through all of them. And here we have a pretty comprehensive report of our field usage for the account object. So we can see ones that are empty. Those obviously might be targets to clean up because no one's putting data in them. But we can also dive a little bit deeper on a particular field and get more information. So let's go and looking at our billing country code here, for example. If I click on this, I get a drill down over here on the right. We tell you not only how empty the field is, so you can see this field has 1,145 records, 805 of those are empty, 207 are the default. So whatever the default data there is for the field, 207 of those records are that. And we also have 28 distinct values. So we're giving you lots of nice pieces of information about the field. And if you come over here and look at the drill down, we can see there's our 805 empty, and then 207 is US on the billing country code. So we know, obviously, that that's our default. And understanding default data can be just as important as understanding what fields are empty, for example. So this is a great place, again, to come and analyze your fields and get rid of that extra bloat, especially if you're moving to Lightning or you're trying to get a little faster performance out of the org. Okay, let's go back to that Optimize menu and let's check out the Forgotten Assets report. Now, Forgotten Assets uses a custom algorithm to analyze each different metadata type in your org and to give you an analysis of what's not being used. So this works for any metadata type. In this case, I've selected email templates. And you can see here in red, these are the email templates that Snapshot believes are not being used in this org. And how does it know that? Let's scroll over. These email templates are not referenced by any other metadata assets, whereas these are referenced by workflows or approval process, networks, Apex classes, and so forth. So that's a pretty good indicator that these are dead weight or technical debt. We can also look at last modified and the date. So last modified by Bill on 2013, not connected to anything, definitely a cleanup target for us. And what's great about this tool is we can right-click and actually export this out as a job list that can then be taken over to our deployment tools and actually run that delete job. So we take you from, you doing what you need to understand what needs to be cleaned up and then actually giving you the tools to create and make that happen. So again, this was email templates, but we could do this for any metadata type, groups, queues, roles, anything that you need to analyze can really be analyzed from this report and let you get a handle on that technical debt. We're really trying to just hit some highlights here today, but just like with the document menu, the Optimize menu has a lot of other reports that can really help you with your cleanup. There's pick list usage, there's last activity dates, there's reports that will analyze both code quality and code coverage, and relationship hierarchies. So just great ways to really get rid of technical debt and understand how your debt is impacting your orgs. But what we're going to do now is talk about your security model. Now, managing your profiles and your permission sets is just as important as getting rid of other technical debt. If you have a bloated or complex security model, it may be too hard to understand, or it may not be providing the correct security that you really need for your organization. So what we're going to do is go to the Visualize menu here, and we're going to view profiles. Now what this does is it puts profiles into a matrix so that you can quickly track down the security. So going down the left-hand side here, we have all of our profiles. Across the top here, we have, in this case, our field permissions. But I could go to this menu in the upper right and look at any part of the security for the profile. So for example, maybe I want to look at my object permissions. Now I can quickly track down security here. I can see for the contract manager, for the account, that they have create, delete, and edit, read. So very quick way to document and to understand your security. And of course, with a right click, this could be brought out for compliance documentation, for administrator reference, in all of the formats that you would expect. Now you may just want to document or understand a profile or a couple of profiles. So we give you this trim table button, which allows you to select just the profiles that you want to see. So maybe we just want to see these 4. And now we've got a really concise view of just those profiles. Another part of it that's really powerful is that it does inline editing. So I'm going to go to the edit palette here. And I could, for example, let's select this custom account, custom settings, custom object. These profiles have no access. Now, I could also add in, maybe I want to also give some access to this object and to this object. And I could come in here, make my edits to the security and click apply and make those changes on the fly. So doing mass editing of your profiles or your permission sets from this matrix is really fast and saves you tons and tons of clicks inside of Salesforce. And on that note, permission sets work exactly the same way. If you go to the next tab over, you have your permission sets going down the left-hand side, and in this case, object permissions going across the top. And again, you could access any part of the security for them. So just a really comprehensive way to document, to edit, to understand your security model. Let's go look at a few other ways that we can help you tackle profiles and permission sets. Okay, now let's go look at security from a user perspective. So I'm going to right-click on the org again, and we're going to go down to that security menu. And here we have a report called Profiles and Permission Sets. And what this report does is it really looks at security from the perspective of a user or a set of users. So the first part of it's similar to what you saw before. I could click here and see the object permissions in the matrix or tab visibility or whatever for the profile or the permission set. But down here at the bottom, we have what we call combined security, where you could select any part of the security, like let's say object permissions for our demo here, and look at it by any set of users to see how they got to the settings that they have. So let's go to display report here. Now I've got this report set up for one user, but if I go to the select users button up here, I could set it up for any number of users by searching and adding them by role, profile name, and so forth. So we can see here that Bill for the account object has create, delete, edit, read, view. But you notice that we've highlighted this in green. The reason that this is highlighted in green is because there's been elevation of security from the profile. And we walk you through it. So this first line here, we can see that Bill is assigned the standard user profile, which gives him read and view access. Then there's a permission set that gives read, a permission set that gives create and read, and another permission set that gives delete, edit, and read. And ultimately his combined security, which is what we call combined security, is create, delete, edit, read, and view. This is really powerful because discovering this in Salesforce is complex. You'd have to jump around a lot of places, remember what you saw, and it's a really tough way to do it. So this report lets you build out security for any set of users across any security settings and really understand how they got to that security. All right, let's go look at another way that we help you tackle profiles and permission sets. Okay, let's move back into that security menu and let's go check out the user permission assignments feature. This dialog really does a lot of things. It lets you handle the assignments for your profiles, your permission sets, and your permission set groups. It lets you create permission set groups. It'll merge similar profiles. So just a lot of really powerful features when you're trying to tackle a complex security model. So here you can see if I click on any user, it'll show me what profiles, permission sets, and if there are permission set groups, what permission set groups they're assigned to. And I can actually use these radio buttons across the top to flip the view. So maybe I want to see it by permission set. So for example, show me, all the users that have this permission set or this permission set, okay? And then I can actually click on anything and make those changes into Salesforce on the fly. So maybe Bill here doesn't need these two permission sets. I could take that assignment off, click save, and make those changes back into Salesforce in real time. So the next tab over is the group creation. Here I can select any number of permission sets, calculate who's assigned to them, and then actually create the group. So this really streamlines helping you move to the new permission set groups that Salesforce really wants everyone to be organizing their permission sets into. And this really makes that creation and movement fast. This is probably my favorite tab on the dialog here, which is merge profiles. Here I could take similar profiles. For example, let's take these contract manager profiles. And I could say, if I merge them down into one base profile, what permission sets would need to be created with what permissions? So Snapshot's actually calculating that right now to give me that information. And then once I have that information in step 3 here, I'm going to be able to actually make that change in real time. So here we're going to see the results popping up. It's doing quite a bit of math. And again, this is something that doing manually in Salesforce would be incredibly difficult. So we know that if we merge these into one profile, we would need these 4 permission sets with these permissions. And over here, I could give it a name. So let's call it Contract Manager. And I could decide whether or not I want to delete out the old profiles. And then with this click, it'll create the new base profile. It'll create the permission sets, and it'll reassign the users all with one click. So just a really powerful tool to help you simplify your security model, but make sure that your security remains intact. And the last part of this is just a bunch of reports like, what are the users assigned to what permission sets, those types of things that you can select and put into our display tab where you can export them and bring them out for administrator reference. Okay, great. So I think that was a real solid look at how we help you manage your security model as well. The last thing I wanted to talk about before we move on is that using these deploy arrows, you can connect any org to any org. And when you do so, you can right-click on these deploy arrows and you could handle the actual deployment. So once you've cleaned up and optimized your orgs, we have a full featured release management tool that can help you manage that deployment of both metadata and data. Those are things that'd be great to cover in another video, and hopefully we'll have one for you here in the future. So hopefully we gave everybody a great look at how you can optimize and clean up your Salesforce orgs using Snapshot. And we're going to throw a slide up here to give you a little information on how you can find out more. Thank you very much.